All right, ready for a deep dive?
Always. What are we diving into today?
Today, it's the wild world of data structures. Specifically, a hacker news discussion that really got people going: B trees versus hash maps.
The age-old debate. Which one reigns supreme?
You got it. It all started with this article. Fast B trees definitely raised a few eyebrows.
I bet. B-Tree's giving our trusty hash maps a run for their money in the speed department.
That's what they were saying. So naturally, the comment section was a goldmine.
Oh, I can only imagine. Passionate programmers, optimizing code, squeezing out every millisecond.
Exactly. And right off the bat, someone with the username BeyondRope dropped some serious knowledge about how we measure speed in these tests. Apparently, using the RDTSCP instruction can make hash maps look worse than they actually are compared to B trees.
Or DTSCP. Tricky business. A lot of benchmarking tools rely on it, but it can create a bit of a barrier during execution, preventing some code sections from running at the same time. Hash maps tend to be more sensitive to this than B trees.
So it's like comparing apples and oranges if our stopwatch is a little off for one of them.
Precisely, and it highlights how even subtle differences in testing methodology can skew the results.
I guess you think twice about those performance claims, right?
Absolutely. But wait, there's more. BeyondRope also brought up this whole thing about branch prediction.
Oh yeah, I remember this part. Now, for those of us who haven't spent years staring at lines of code, remind us what branch prediction is all about.
Sure. Imagine you're driving down a road, and you come to a fork, right, left or right. Computers face similar choices when running code. Branch prediction is their way of guessing which path to take to save time.
Smart. But what happens when they guess wrong?
That's a mispredicted branch, and you'd think it'd slow things down. But here's the kicker. Even those wrong turns can be helpful because of something called caching.
Caching, like storing stuff we use often so it's easier to find next time.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You're working on a puzzle, keeping the pieces you need close by. Even if you briefly grab a piece from farther away, you've still brought it closer, speeding things up if you need it again. Caching is similar.
Wow, so even mistakes can be beneficial in the long run.
In a way, yes. It's about more than just the immediate action. It's the ripple effect.
Fascinating. And I remember BeyondRope had even more to say, especially about making B trees even faster.
Oh, absolutely. They dove into branch-free, linear, and vectorized searches. Really interesting stuff, but a bit in the weeds for our dive today.
Maybe a challenge for our listeners to explore on their own. But it wasn't all just about B trees, was it?
Oh, not at all. This Hacker News thread was like a data structure battle royale.
It was like someone threw open the doors and suddenly you had crit bit trees, hash array map tries, everyone trying to get in on the action.
Right, a real data structure showdown. But I think it actually highlights something really important. There's no one best data structure to rule them all.
It's about choosing the right tool for the job, I guess.
Exactly. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses, its ideal use cases. It's all about trade-offs, really. And speaking of trade-offs, this whole discussion took an interesting little detour into the world of Rust programming. Remember that?
Oh yeah, it came up how Rust uses the CFASH algorithm for its hash maps, even though some people were saying there are faster options out there.
Right, and on the surface that might seem strange, but someone, I think it was Espadrine, made a good point. It's about priorities. Rust is known for its focus on security. And CFASH, while maybe not the absolute fastest, is designed to be more resistant to certain kinds of attacks, like hash flooding, for example.
So it's like choosing a bank vault over a regular door. Sure, the vault might take a bit longer to get into, but the extra security is often worth it.
Exactly. It's that classic balancing act in programming. Speed versus security, memory efficiency versus complexity, finding the right balance for what you're trying to achieve.
Speaking of memory efficiency, wasn't there a point about B trees actually being more efficient than hash maps in certain cases? Which seems a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah. Kibo Money brought that up. Apparently, especially in a language like Rust, B trees can sometimes use memory more efficiently than you might expect, challenging those assumptions about hash maps always being the lightweight option.
Always exceptions to the rule, I guess. It's not as simple as, this one is always better across the board.
Absolutely not. A lot depends on the implementation details within a specific programming language, too. Each language has its own quirks, its optimizations that can really impact how much memory a data structure actually ends up using.
So many layers to this. Like, it's one thing to understand the data structure itself, but then you've got the whole environment it's operating in.
Exactly. And those interactions can make a huge difference, especially when you're talking about large amounts of data. But there's one more comment I want to bring in because it adds a really fascinating twist. Remember the original article that sparked this whole discussion? Fast bee trees?
Yeah, the one that got everyone fired up about bee trees in the first place. What about it?
Well, someone with the username Erwhale pointed out something very important. The article, while praising the performance of bee trees, never actually claimed that they were faster than hash maps.
Oh, interesting. So it's like the title was a bit misleading.
It's more like, it's always important to read beyond the headline. Don't jump to conclusions based on a catchy title.
Always good advice. So where does that leave us? Are bee trees the underdog that put up a good fight, or is it more complicated?
Oh, it's definitely more nuanced. We can't just crown a winner. It's about understanding what each one is good at.
Right.
Their strengths, when to use them.
Right, picking the right tool. But with all these things to consider, speed, security, memory, it's a lot, even for experienced programmers. Any takeaways for our listeners, especially when they're facing these performance debates?
I think the biggest one is don't believe everything you read. Be a little skeptical, especially about headlines and benchmarks. Dig a little deeper,
Like what hardware were they using for the test? How they even measure the performance?
Exactly. All those details matter. Remember that thing with RDTSCP and how it can affect results?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Easy to forget. Those things can even make a difference.
And on top of that, remember, this field is always changing. What's the best today might be old news tomorrow.
So never stop learning. Right.
Exactly. Stay curious, try new things, be open to different approaches. And on that note, one final thought. We've talked about speed, security, memory, but what about other factors? Like what if your data needs to be in order? Or you're doing tons of insertions and deletions?
Good point. Like there's always more to consider, more layers to explore.
Always. The world of data structures is huge and fascinating, so keep asking those questions and see what you discover.